You know how it is. When something breaks, what's the first thing we do? We look for who broke it. But what if that instinct is the very thing holding us back? In this explainer, we're going to flip the script on how we talk about failure. We're going to turn those tense, finger-pointing meetings into amazing engines for learning and getting stronger. So let's dive in and see how we can re-engineer these deep dive conversations from the ground up.
Okay, picture this. You've been invited to that meeting, the one that pops up on your calendar after a huge outage or when a project just completely goes off the rails. You can feel the tension before you even walk in the room. Everybody's on the defensive, shields are up, and they're all ready to prove it wasn't their fault. It's a painful process we've all been through, and honestly, we all dread it.
So why? Why are these conversations so useless most of the time? I mean, think about the last post-mortem or incident review you were a part of. Did you walk out of there feeling energized, with a clear plan to make things better? Or did it feel more like a courtroom drama, where the goal was to find a guilty party instead of actually understanding what happened? Yeah, that's what I thought. It's super common, but it really doesn't have to be that way.
You can hear the problem right in the language we use. The second we start throwing around phrases like could have, or should have, or failed to do, we've already lost. We've stopped looking at what actually happened. Instead, we're telling a story about an alternate reality that never existed, and you can bet that story has a villain. And then you get this one, the absolute classic conversation ender. Slapping the label human error on something might feel like you found the root cause, but it's the exact opposite. It's just a label we use when we give up on being curious. It slams the door on finding the deeper, systemic reasons that a certain action made perfect sense to a smart person in that exact moment. So, how do we fix this? Well, it's going to take a pretty big shift in how we think about the whole thing. We have to ditch the whole shame and blame cycle and start treating these failures for what they are: incredibly rich learning opportunities. The goal is not to find the person who messed up, it's to understand the world that made the mess up almost inevitable. And the bottom line is this: you just can't fire your way to a more reliable system. It doesn't work. Getting rid of the person who pushed the wrong button just leaves you with a smaller, more terrified team. The organizations that really get ahead are the ones that make it safe, even encouraged, for people to talk about what they learned from a failure so the whole team benefits.
So you've really got two paths you can go down, right? The old way, the blame game, is basically a witch hunt. You're looking for a culprit. But the new way, the learning-focused review, that's a search for missing context. It asks way better questions like, what kind of pressure was this person under? What critical information did they not have? And how did our own tools and procedures let them down?
Okay, so that's the big idea. But how do you actually do it? Let's get practical. To have these better deep dive conversations, you have to learn how to spot the common traps that are constantly pulling you back into that blame game. And trust me, once you see them, you can't unsee them. And that's when you can really start leading your team in a much better direction. We've already hit on this one, but it's so important we've got to make it trap number 1. Stopping your investigation at human error is like a doctor telling a patient their diagnosis is being sick. Yeah, it's true, but so what? It tells you absolutely nothing useful about the cause or the cure. It's a lazy conclusion, and it is the enemy of real learning. So here's the better way. You got to start with a totally different assumption. Assume the person involved is smart, competent, and was trying to do the right thing. Their action made sense to them at the time, given what they knew. Once you start there, you can ask the really powerful questions. What piece of context were they missing? What was our system not telling them? All right, chap number 2. This one is called counterfactual reasoning. It's a fancy term, but you hear it all the time. It's those sentences about what could have or should have happened. A post-incident review is supposed to be about reality. But when you start talking about this imaginary world of things that didn't happen, you're just distracting everyone, and let's be honest, you're usually just shaming the people who were involved. Now, the fix for this is actually pretty simple, but man, it takes discipline. When you hear someone say they should have, you just gently call it out. Say something like, that's an interesting idea for the future, but for now, let's stick to the actual timeline. What did happen next? You have to be relentless about pulling the conversation back to reality. Okay, trap number 3 is a sneaking one. It's all about using what's called normative language. Basically, these are judgy words we use to describe what people did. If you say a decision was made hastily or an action was careless, you're using the power of hindsight against them. The people in the middle of a crisis don't know how it's going to end. It's totally unfair and unhelpful to judge them as if they did. Instead, you've got to put yourself in their shoes, right there in the moment. Ask, what information did they have available? What time pressure were they under? What parts of our system or our processes were failing them, making that decision seem like the best option they had? It's all about their context, not your outcome.
All right, on to trap number 4, assuming the machine is perfect. I love this one. Some people call it the Scooby-Doo fallacy. It's that classic line, the system would have worked perfectly if it weren't for those meddling kids. This way of thinking paints people as the messy, chaotic source of problems in our otherwise perfect, beautiful machines. But that's just not how complex systems work. Ever.
The way out of this trap? You gotta flip the script entirely. People aren't just a source of errors. They are the #1 source of resilience and adaptability. They're the ones who keep these complex systems from falling apart every single day. So instead of pointing at the person, point at the system and ask, how is this system deficient? How can we better support the people who are constantly improvising to keep things online?
And that brings us to our 5th and final trap. And honestly, this might be the biggest missed opportunity of them all. In our mad dash to figure out what went wrong, we almost always forget to look at what went right. Not just during the incident, but every single day leading up to it. There is a goldmine of information in understanding our successes. So we need to start asking totally different kinds of questions. Like, wait a minute, how does this incredibly complex system manage to work perfectly 99.9% of the time? Or when you're in that review, ask, what specific things did the team do that actually stopped this from being a much, much bigger disaster? These questions uncover hidden strengths in your team and your system that you can then build on. Look, avoiding these 5 traps, it's not just about having nicer meetings. It's about a much bigger, more important goal, building real, actual resilience into our teams and our technology. It's about getting better at handling the surprises and curveballs that, let's face it, are always going to be coming our way.
So when we talk about resilience, it's actually more than one thing. This slide kind of breaks it down into 4 key flavors. You've got rebound, which is just bouncing back. Robustness is how well you can take a punch without falling over. But the really advanced stuff is graceful extensibility. That's how you handle surprises gracefully. And sustained adaptability, which is all about learning and evolving over the long haul. The real goal is to build all 4.
And all this stuff, it actually has a name. It's a whole field of study called resilience engineering. It's all about figuring out how systems, and that includes the people, built up the capacity to handle surprises. So all those productive, deep dive conversations we've been talking about, that's not just good management. That's you doing resilience engineering.
But here's the thing. A great conversation, even a perfect one, is just the start. All those amazing insights are completely worthless if they just end up in a document that nobody ever reads again. Learning from our failures isn't something that just happens. It's an action. It's about taking what you discovered and actively using it to make things better.
So what does that look like? Well, here are a few ideas to get you started. You could start a book club where you review past incidents just to keep the lessons fresh. Or maybe create a little internal newsletter to share surprising things the team is learning. But the most important thing, drive those lessons back into your actual design docs and your planning so the organization as a whole gets smarter.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time things go sideways and you're in that tense meeting, you have a choice. You can play the same old blame game that gets you nowhere, or you can be the one who starts asking the questions that lead to real, deep, lasting learning. So which is it going to be?